My buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and screw.
Okay, we are back live 12/27/2024. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax. The title of tonight's live stream, I'm not trying to be provocative, but people are talking about it, and we can't not address it. And I think that there are those who would wish that they could just pressure us into not talking about it. They'll accuse us of being too demanding, moving the goalpost. But we can't drop our skepticism just because we find someone to be especially trustworthy. So it's not personal that a lot of people are questioning the footage from Antarctica. I think it's just due diligence. And some of the most skeptical people on the planet happen to think that it's not a planet. And they're not letting this thing go. This final experiment has not got to pass. And there's this thing going on right now. They call it Vapegate. And Witsit Vapes It. Witsit Gets It was trying to demonstrate that he's in Antarctica. And you could see his breath by vaping. Like he would go off camera, hit the vape, blow it, and it just looked a little phony. Well, then someone else is looking into this, and they're saying, hey, wait, they try to say there's no green screen, but that might have been a red herring to hide massive LED screens. Because there was a scene where one of these characters had a drone, and they flew the drone around. And the drone was setting off an alarm. It beeps when it gets close to an object, so it beeped when it went by McToon. But then it beeped again when it got too close to what would presumably be the screen. No objects between it and the mountain, and yet its object signal is going off. So there are some questionable things. People are asking valid questions. Vapegate, I mean, it'd be sad if this multi-million-dollar psyop was taken down because Witsit tried to pull a little trick there. We'll watch the video if you have any questions about it. I'm not alleging. I'm just pointing out what other people are alleging. And a lot of people think that this whole thing was performed in some kind of an enclosure. That you can only trust the footage so much. And I understand fakeability. I understand you can fake pretty much anything. But could you fake a mission of this scale? Well, I don't know. Are we talking about the same people who faked the moon landing? If so, then it wouldn't be outside their scope. They have the budget. But then, if they have a budget, I have to wonder, why didn't they rent any penguins? I mean, that would have sealed it. For me, anyway. We're joined by Austin, 108, 144Ks, Invalis, Matt X, Children of a Lesser Shed Dog, Santa failed to deliver autohoaxology, 101. Yeah, Santa hates skeptics. But if you need tracking, I think I included it, unless you got the tracking from Ko-Fi. Down to South, Thirst for Truth, Plain Dakota, Ted Stryker, Conspiracy, Alarmist, Deprogram Truther. Thank you for joining. Oh, good point. Children of a Lesser Dog, Vape AIDS was the precursor to COVID. It was like in 33 states they were banning vape pens because everybody was getting vape lung. And then it was followed by that. Very interesting. Joined by Jennifer Reeves and Marcus. Thank you for joining. So there's quite a lot happening here at the end of the year. Let's go through my points of interest, which is my attempt to highlight the most important things to talk about that day. So let me go ahead and, so right now we can talk about these things. I say important, I mean, important as far as relevant to our interest, insofar as we are interested in knowing what is being painted on the zeitgeist, what the masses believe right now. Because last week they believed that we were being invaded by drones. Nobody's talking about drones right now. Nobody's even embarrassed about the fact that they took part in that big panic. And now nobody's talking about it, and nobody's talking about the fact that nobody's talking about it. Just swept under the rug. So we'll talk about the Beyonce NFL halftime show. Deadpool. So we have some additional information. I talked about how when Luigi's in the back of the cop car and he's smiling, you see this air freshener of Deadpool. And I thought, well, what is Deadpool's significance? I mean, he's a Joker kind of guy. Lots of jokes. but he's also an anti-hero, which ties into it. And then there's something else. There's something else with Deadpool. Anyway, I have some information that may connect with this Luigi. Okay, continuing. Vapegate. Yeah, we'll talk about Vapegate, and then as the world stage burns. So one of the things for 2025 to look forward to is that, well, I do not advocate proselytizing. We're not trying to wake up Normieville. But we're not going to act as though there aren't legitimate debates to have with the proponents of various, what I call guardrails. And these are false explanations, fake conspiracies, things that are used to keep the free thinkers or conspiracy theorists from concluding that fakery is far more prominent than they think. I mean, there are truthers who will say Trump was shot at and there was a second shooter. It was an inside job. But they can't get that, no, that was a magic show and he's part of it. So there's kind of a paradigm shift that has to happen. And it has happened for IPR listeners. They've already figured this out. But for those who are resistant, who are clinging to the old model, the false flaggers, the ones who are clinging to the post 9/11 interpretation of conspiracies, for them it's going to be more of a paradigm shock. And so this idea of as the world stage burns just means that we're going to have a lot of, I believe, constructive debate. And there might be a little bit of friction. But I think it's a necessary part of the transition into the parallel media, where we segregate our entire conspiracy theorist demographic from this alt media box, which has had, I think, the effect of keeping it constrained within acceptable conspiracy theories. It's perfectly fine to freak out about drones, think they're aliens, and then a bunch of people shine lasers at planes and people are talking about shooting planes down. That's fine. But don't question what NASA says about Mars or the moon. So it's kind of interesting which conspiracy theories are acceptable and which ones are not. And the ones that are acceptable are generally false explanations, false leads, and red herrings. Joined by Flozik, and ADR says, was Whitsitt hitting a vape or is he getting a drink out of a water bottle to make his breath visible? Well, there was another video from a side angle. So you have one video where Whitsitt is talking to the camera, and then another one where he walks 20 feet away to get some snow, and then he comes back, and on the secondary video, you see him hitting a vape. And it was verified by Jaron that he brought a vape with him to Antarctica. So there was vaping going on, and it looks like he vaped on the camera, and he's like, there, you can see my breath, and then it was gone. So like, that's really kind of bizarre. Whatever the cause, it's bizarre. And people are looking at it. And they're looking at this entire thing suspect. And I mean, I think we all know already the score here. I mean, it wasn't like it was an objective group of people engaged in some kind of scientific exploration of the facts. You had all the gloobers who were betting literal money, crypto on this thing. Scientists don't bet on the outcome of their observations and experiments unless they're climate scientists. And that's why those guys are questionable. You shouldn't have a personal stake in it. And then the flatties are less than objective. There are reasons why people don't trust these characters. I mean, I've made no secret about it that I believe that anyone faking an ISS transit is likely a NASA proxy for some reason. Maybe they made a deal. Joined by X322, Clockwork113, Brandon MDM says, the point of modern propaganda isn't only to misinform and push an agenda, it's to exhaust your critical thinking and annihilate truth. Yes, and I've been having this protracted debate, which has been really useful, with several proponents of simulation theory and similar. And what I'm arriving at here is that I think that subjectivism and relativism might be deliberately inserted with nefarious intent into the conspiracy theory realm. So that demographic that is critically examining media can be taken into a realm where facts are subjective, nothing is true. And I think that's sabotage. So I've made this point to say that whatever your explanations for the big picture, that is separate from the objective day-to-day breakdown of propaganda. We can't mystify it. We have to be, I think, cognizant of that tendency, and it's huge in Trutherville, to ascribe to a higher power what is being done by human operators. And the knowledge of human operators leads us to further clues. For example, we've taken to recognizing that these scripts have to have writers. I mean, to suggest that history is scripted is not a reach. We're talking about major psyops or big transformative perception management events that are obviously in advance written out like a drill, more or less. But not only do they fake a certain percentage of the news, but that small percentage of fake stories is like the main narrative driver. So it's not insignificant, especially when you look back the decades that you've been paying attention, however many years it's been, and you're like, okay, well, nothing that you saw that you know wasn't as presented was reported as anything but as the mainstream reported it. The CNN version of things, the official version, is the one that goes into the history books. So there's obviously a case to be made here that our history is faked or tainted with fakery. So what does that mean? Well, if we're looking at our worldview as a model, we all live within a false model because it's predicated on certain things that aren't true being true. And some of them seem insignificant, but the big picture, it's highly significant, and it matters that we're all synchronized in a certain way. Specifically, I would say with regard to weapons of mass destruction, to the doomsday scenarios. And one other thing that I also want to point out is that I'm not a doomsayer. I'm not predicting big destructive events, but I'm pointing out that the power elite use the threat of big destructive events as a way of synchronizing us, of cowing us. So, for example, when it comes to just I I often talk about nukes. We always talk about the threat of nukes, but it's the threat of them. I think it was, Saul Alinsky, rule number 9, rules for radicals. The threat of the thing is more terrifying than the thing itself. And it's nothing but threats. I mean, it's amazing. Look how many times we've been promised World War III, mutually assured destruction, alien invasion. It never comes. Not saying I'm disappointed, because I'm not even worried about it. You know, I do see a lot of what we would consider to be foreshadowing, media conditioning, getting us ready for the Oppenheimer hitting, the Oppenheimer scenario, the nuke hitting Seattle. And that movie came out to precede whatever they're going to do. This is one thing that you can look at that is systematic and structural. The media foreshadows the big news agenda of tomorrow. There's a correlation. There's a correlation between every fake news event we examine and the media ecosystem at that time and leading up to it. It's a continuum. And that's one of the big breakthroughs we've had over the last year, is the recognition that what has been termed predictive programming is really nothing more than just subtle propaganda messaging that is just pervasive, but it has a uniform purpose. But you wouldn't know it if you thought that there was any meaningful distinction between news and entertainment, between real and fake. Immortal L says, how can the space program believers say, oh yes, the space program believers will say, quote, how could every country's space program be in on it? Well, if you can understand the rationale for faking the moon landing as presented in the movie Fly Me to the Moon, the idea was we have to trick the Russians because they're winning the space race with Sputnik. So winning a propaganda victory was winning capitalism over communism. It was like a worldview warfare move. So America was justified in faking a moon landing. That was the story in the movie, and it makes sense. And I would argue that that is in fact what did happen. But they didn't fake the moon landing to trick the Russians. The Russians and America were faking space to trick the masses, because these different countries are in fact more or less, I would say, collaborators with the power elite over the masses. It's all just an illusion. The idea of separate governments is somewhat illusory. I mean, if you believe that, go for it. But when you look at the overarching paradigm shaping power of mass media, how it goes up to the space program, and how no nation, no government say, hey, their media totally fabricated this event. No, everybody's in agreement on the fakery. They're all in on the world stage. It's a rigged game. And it's so big It's like the only real conspiracy that we have tangible evidence for, and it's so big that no one sees it. The conspiracy theorists don't even notice it. They'll notice psyops, but they don't see psy-war. They'll see fake trees here and there when one's pointed out, but they don't recognize the entire forest is fake. Joined by McDirtywork, Verkjun, R. Cook, Buzzing Frets, and Psy-Obstacles. All right, great. Yeah, Capricorn 1 with O.J. Simpson. I have to watch it still. I'll have to check it out. Truth in Plain Sight. And we were talking about Wag the Dog. So Wag the Dog not only shows the MO, it shows how the media can fake a war. But the movie came out right before the Clinton-Lewinsky thing, where they faked a war to distract from the impropriety of the president, which is what happened with Clinton. And so you can see an example here of the movie was not only like concurrent or predictive programming for what happened right after, but it really displayed the methodology. In fact, I'll bring that movie up if you haven't seen it, Wag the Dog. And I have a ebook I've been working on. That's why I've been gone for the last couple of days. I'll be publishing it. It's called Lie World, where I'm trying to put everything in as concise a book as I can, as far as explaining that what my big premise here simply comes down to is that news media is not what people think. That there's a deliberate synchronization between media globally, to use that word, and of course that would also include all entertainment with a uniform purpose. And that fake news just scratches the surface. We're talking about fake history. And that's why I bring up, looking back 10 years, 20 years at all the fake stories that go into the history books. It doesn't matter what you notice. Okay, listen to this. So we're talking about Wag the Dog, 1997 satire film. It was released 1 month before the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal and the bombing of the pharmaceutical factory in Sudan by the Clinton administration. This prompted the media to draw comparisons between the film and reality. So this is just one example, and this happens all the time. And before people were systematically seeking this out as we do and realizing that this is actually the standard operating procedure, these are not anomalies, they would say, okay, these are weird coincidences, but they can't be coincidences. And this led to the erroneous conclusion that these are the result of some higher power influencing human events to where the events somehow match the movies. And what we have really discerned and uncovered here is that no, this is actually what I call systemic fakery. It is a deliberate synchronization between the fake and the real, and it is not only pervasive and it's consistent, but it's what media really is. It's not there to inform you, it's there to conform you to a prefabricated worldview, which they act out. Like on TV, in the news, they're acting out on the world stage with various simulated events, and through propaganda, they're acting out a prefabricated history. We acquiesce to it. And it's not just what is proactively faked. It's the selective focus. It's the lies by omission that largely constitute our collective shared worldview. Joined by Lucid Streams. Thank you for joining. I'm going to open up phones. P Trippa 103. Awesome. We have a few things on our list here. Again, I started off talking about Beyonce's halftime show. We'll get into that. And then the Luigi thing. And Vapegate. So, Level Earth, did they fake the flat Earth experiment? A lot of people are saying this. So let me just play a short clip here.
A couple of points that are going to be relevant when we cross-reference this with another bit of footage from a different angle, capturing the same scene we're looking at now, okay?
Now again, I want to say one more thing. Jaron is wrong for excoriating people who are questioning this. Here's a guy who made a living for, 10, 15 years calling the moon landing fake. And the fact that, he's talking to an audience that can see the fakeability of such a thing and would find it, objectionable that they would question a presentation like this is a little hypocritical. Like, you have to give your skeptical listeners room to be skeptics. You can't tell them what to believe. So I totally disagree with him attempting to emotionally influence people to agree with him. Like, no, screw that. I think we should go over this thing pixel by pixel, glitch by glitch.
It's so bright. Why?
And I also want to point out, one of my first impressions when I saw this was Jaron gets out of the plane and he says, wow, those mountains are 10 miles away, but they look so close like I could touch them. And that glacier, that's 10 miles away. And he's laughing. He's laughing. Like, I've never had the experience of mountains being really close when they're 10 miles away. I've never felt like I could just reach out and touch them. I've never had that. I mean, maybe, if in my opinion, maybe it could be the result of a screen. You go into a 3D environment, a very big studio, and we have many examples we could talk about here in terms of these virtual sets. And maybe it does appear to be accurate as far as being 10 miles away, but your senses aren't really fooled by it. And as we have, as I'll show you, and I alluded to it in one of these videos, they do show something with the drones that suggests that they are in a closed set. But let me play the Vapegate scene here.
Isn't your breath foggy? It's not as foggy as it was a second ago. It's kind of foggy right now. But right before I started the stream, I tested it, so I knew you guys were going to say that.
Okay, so now he's going to walk back a few feet for some inexplicable reason, and then he comes back. And on a secondary camera, you can see that he's hitting a vape pen.
Okay, I'm gonna play her song again while I go in here, so no one else maybe says something they don't want on stream on my headphones. I'm gonna go grab my gloves. This is a good idea anyway.
Okay, hold on a second here. I mean, that's a lot of effort to show us your breath. Okay, I think he went out there.
And then straight after, there's no visible breath, which would suggest he's done something off screen to make his breath visible, you know, like a vape, for example. We'll keep playing because I want to use this little clip a little bit, play this clip a little bit longer, just as another cross-referencing factor here.
It sucks. It hurts your lungs. Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to get there. And I'm sorry, but like this is looking really kind of shady here. So he comes back and he shows us snow on his hands. And then here's a side view where he's hitting the vape pen. And I want to just fast forward to the part where he vapes in front of the lens so we can all be convinced that he's in Antarctica.
Benefit from that. Why? We could see your breath blatantly, so much so it appeared that you'd had a puff on a vape. When we cross-reference looking at the other footage...
Anyway, you might say this is nitpicking. I'm trying to find the exact scene where he blows out the vape. I can't quite find it. There's so many of these. I want to get to the one where they're using a drone and appears to be giving off an indicator that they're getting too close to an edge. I also have a couple links here. Amazon Studios virtual production set. Pretty incredible. So we're really asking the question here, is it fakeable? Okay, here we go. This is the other video, and this one here says, don't crash that drone. And so here is where he goes through a number of different sets to describe the types of facilities that are known to exist. But here he is with the drone.
Home points updated.
Hey folks, so one of the bigger upgrades for the...
So this individual here is demonstrating how the drone will tell you when it gets close to an object. And for example, he flies it up to his car, and when it gets too close, it starts beeping.
Table, so yeah, the drone is noticing that.
And I'm going to go backwards.
Now the same sound for obstacle detection shows up when the drone goes too far from him. Yet there's nothing there, unless it's detecting a movie screen.
So obviously, there was a green screen. This drone would not be able to fly backward toward MC2.
So this is a green screen debunk because somebody accused him of using a green screen. And when I heard that, I thought that could be a red herring to distract us from the big LED because nobody uses green screens anymore except in the ISS. And look how poorly the ISS is aging. The ISS is stuck in 2015 level special effects. It's pathetic. Lean Dion says, Witsit and Jaren kept calling people asking about the vape and other anomalies literal R's. Yeah, again, that's just very disrespectful. I don't know why they would turn their backs on skeptics. But, I mean, if I went out there, I would expect a certain number of people to question if it was real or not, obviously. But we have to be fair when it comes to, did they meet the burden of proof? But we also have to recognize that we can't just trust everything on video. Everything is fakeable. Even this gets into that area. Although there's some drone footage he shows, and people say, well, the drone footage proves he was there. I'm pretty sure we have footage of Mars from different rovers. Does that make Mars real? No.
Tune, who's also live streaming and who's also filming the drone.
Why is the drone beeping? What's over there past McToon? I mean, the mountain's miles away. And then again, this is the demonstration where you can see when the drone gets near a car.
And if I just move away from it, and then let's head to it from the side.
So what's going on? Why is there an obstacle detection noise going off? And here we have some clips of different movie sets and actors talking about what it's like to work in these virtual sets and how realistic they are.
This working man in Hollywood.
Really looks real.
We decided very quickly, okay, let's go up there and scan the environment. So we did a drone scanning of the environment, photogrammetry after that.
And I think my bigger point here is that whatever we're going to discover about this, real or fake, we have to be fully appraised of what is fakeable. Otherwise you can be more easily duped. And one of the things we do here is we keep ourselves informed about what is possible to fake. And speaking of fake, isn't it weird that those two astronauts go to space, like last April or May, for an 8-day mission, and they're still stranded. And here we are approaching 2025. And on Christmas, they all have Santa outfits, and they're floating around with their Santa hats, which are sticking straight up. When previous years, the Santa hats flopped down. So I don't know what's different about the hats, but I do think it's it's highly unusual that if they're planning to stay there for a week, why would they have their Christmas outfits? And again, in Gravity, the Gravity 1999 didn't work on the Santa hats, and then here they're sticking straight up. And people find this believable. I think it's targeted at children, to be honest. I think that's what it comes down to. It's also minimalistic. I'll say NASA's very minimalistic. The ISS doesn't try really hard. It's only one camera angle, easy to fake, same old puppet show. Commenter Verkjun says, it doesn't look like it was that cold. No gloves, light jacket. I'm pretty sure it's cold enough. Yeah, there are a number of people who are saying it looks insanely fake. Does anybody here think it was real just by looking at it? Lucid Stream says, unbelievably fake. The worry is how far they'll actually go thinking they'll get away with it, or are they testing our critical thinking? Yeah, when I listened to the live stream of Jaren yelling at his viewers and listeners saying, if you don't believe me, you're dead to me. He said, we could be friends for 10 years and you're dead to me. And then he roasted deep inside the rabbit's hole, like brutally, just excoriated him and everybody else. And so people are now afraid to disagree with him, afraid to question it. And I think you should encourage people to ask questions if you have the evidence. All you have to do is show them the evidence. Same thing with the media. The media acts offended when you don't believe them. It's like, hey, it's your job to provide the facts. If you can't provide them, you can't get mad at me for not believing. I'm not going to take a leap of faith. Lean Dion says, weird they use that drone with the sound. More weird there's a sound, though. Yeah, I've never heard of a drone. I've never seen one that has that specific obstacle detection noise. However, this appears to be one of those. Diana South says, they upside down like Vapegate. In this case, I kind of think that they're not upside down, and they stuffed the hats with like newspapers or something. I don't see any forehead veins. But tonight we're talking about Vapegate. Vapegate did bring down the ISS in a lot of people's minds. Rocco Calzone put a note here. Where's the proof they even went south, like Antarctica? They could be anywhere. I think somebody was really mad that someone suggested that they were in the Vegas sphere, which I honestly think it's conceivable. Again, we have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to be honest with the facts and what is, in fact, believable and what is fakeable. So again, the drone suggests that they're in a closed movie set. Vaping, pretending like you're in really cold temperatures and you can see your breath condensing, that's kind of questionable. Like, why would you even do that? And this is nothing. I mean, this is just some, I think it's Lionel Media, just some Twitter troll, right-wing spammer. And a lot of these spammer accounts, like Nick Fuentes' Groyper cult, are all being banned right now. Like X it's purging a lot of spam accounts. I mean, I'm asking Pope Elon, please ban all the chemtrail accounts, all those chemtrail spammers. So sick of them. I go through each one. Whenever I see chemtrails on my timeline, I say something impolite and I block them. Like I'm done with it. I've already purged like 20 chemtrail spammers, and they make money. These people are making money by spamming pictures of clouds. And it's not even chemtrails anymore. Now it's just clouds. They're just mad at any cloud. Anyway, this is some ridiculous video, obviously choreographed. Some lady beating up 10 larger guys like a Netflix superheroine. And, obviously it's fake. Or so you would think. But no, you have people sharing it, just talking about how much they think this is great. And so I'm just pointing this out because it just speaks to the visual illiteracy of the average person. And the people who fall for this are going to be the ones who are going to call you crazy for not believing in moon landings. We have to exercise discernment here. Okay, and I had a point here I want to bring up as well. So this mind war concept, and this is in that book I mentioned, Lie World. So the mind war consists of both the overt use of propaganda and influence operations, but it also involves the training of the targets themselves, who are trained to process information in a very passive way. And I think there's an element here too of subjectivism that's being not only encouraged, but I think it's the status quo. I think we're moving into a very subjectivist, relativist, even solipsistic world, and it's by design. I think that's what the future holds for us. So I'm just bringing it up because it's part of keeping us in a pliable state. Vapes it, fakes it. Interesting nickname. So I'll put a link to it here. It's Level Earther. I'm going through the comments. Interestingly, most people agree with these video content creators. So if Jaron and others think that they're going to stop this discussion and that people are suddenly going to believe them, no, not even close. Listen to this one. Not of This World says, Stanley Kubrick would have been proud of their fakery. Not bad for amateurs. And was it a chemtrail I saw in the sky behind him? I lived and worked at a ski resort in Utah, very dry, minus 10 degrees, and I saw my breath all the time. Why does he have to get gloves to pick up snow? And it looks like he walked over to an ice box full of snow. Oh, that's interesting. And if it's white, it would be easy to white it out. See, these people are thinking. Why was Shitsit wearing gloves? Why wasn't he wearing gloves the whole time? The vape is sketchy. And walking away to get the snow when it's right beneath his feet is ridiculous. This is really interesting. If it was okay, where was the vape in the second angle? We saw that one. You have to see it for yourself. I'm breaking down the new McKeegan's 4K video. Observe as they face the sun behind the mountain that the light sources on their back casting shadows in front of them. The ALE shed is being illuminated from the north, while the sun is in the... Okay. It looks like there's quite a lot of comments here. A lot of people not trusting it. Anybody here in the chat believe in it? Anybody here find it believable? Children of a Lesser Shed Dog says, I wonder how much money Luigi's getting for this world stage acting role. Yeah, so Luigi is not a patsy. He's not a revolutionary. He's not a class warrior. He's not the Joker. But he's a live action role player. He's an actor. He's probably making more than the astronauts. And either they let him go, or he gets out and gets a nose job, shaves his unibrow, and gets a gig somewhere. They just recycle these individuals. It's a lifetime job. Okay, here was the connection. This was a connection that someone had brought up to me. This was from Soul Panther. He said, probably not a connection. It's interesting how, and this is talking about Luigi in the cop car, they have a Deadpool air freshener. Wade Wilson, the Deadpool killer, is a recent crime TV murderer who has garnered a lot of attention due to the groupies he has attracted. So to get back to this, we were talking about how Luigi's in the car, and as you can see here, you've got a couple of things on the dashboard. One of them is these are air fresheners. One of them is the Dave Chappelle crackhead as like a saint. The other one is Deadpool. And so Deadpool's an anti-hero. That's one part of it. Another part of it, he's kind of Joker-esque in the sense that he makes jokes, breaks the fourth wall. I think there's something there. But his name is Wade Wilson. And Wade Wilson is a modern Ted Bundy. Here's a couple articles. Women around the world are obsessing over Wade Wilson. The female obsession with killers isn't new. It was most famously seen with Ted Bundy. Why women are obsessing over convicted killer Wade Wilson, a man tatted with a Joker smile and hate symbols on his face, has women coming to his defense. And all they can talk about is how hot the guy is. Okay, so let's take a look at Wade Wilson's Joker smile, because I didn't know he had that. But so you have Wade Wilson, now connected to Deadpool, connected to this particular character Luigi, and as you noted on my first article about him, I said, is CEO shooter the Joker. And he was also compared to Dave Franco, who played the Riddler. So I have this article here, first impressions. I'm describing how the CEO shooter is the Joker, a number of reasons why I say so. Mainly, I would say this. It's the group of people dressing up like him, taking his side, and it's the kill the rich aspect of it, which the Joker had a kill the rich movement, and they put on clown masks. And so it's a similar narrative here. So we had already made the Joker comparisons. Joker, the Boston Bomber, this is been a reoccurring theme. So we've already made this comparison with Luigi. So now we have a deeper connection with Luigi, because Luigi is now connected to Deadpool through that very specifically placed meme, because none of these things are accidental. When it comes to a psyop, you have to consider all these things. It's like a Kubrick film. Everything's a clue. So here we have Deadpool, Wade Wilson, the real-life Wade Wilson, also fawned over by female fans like Luigi, and he's got the Joker smile on his face. Very nice find. Copaesthetic says, didn't Dave Chappelle do an 846 thing? Oh, yes, he did. Dave Chappelle had a lot to say about the number 846 and also something about Kobe Bryant's numbers 824. But yeah, he gave a 27-minute speech after the George Floyd thing on Netflix. Lucid Stream says, how many women do you know that are obsessed with killers? I don't know any directly, but actually, I have known a few I have known people who have seemingly deliberately sought out people in jail. A lot of women like individuals in jail. And I knew someone who did have a thing for some MS-13 killer and ended up getting together with him later, having kids. So yeah, apparently it's a thing. If I heard someone say that they agree that Luigi shooting the CEO is a good thing, they're already out of my life, out of my circle. I don't really have a high tolerance for sociopaths or psychopaths. I think it's pretty grotesque what's going on with this. Didn't the Night Stalker get married in jail? And Charles Manson was also getting groupies. I watched a Dateline show on Luigi. Perez Hilton called him Joker, says Penguinati. Okay, I'm going to have to add that to my list. Very interesting. I'm looking for a headline related to that. I can definitely add that to my list here. Because my contention here is this, that the Joker character, and even in Joker 2, I think it relates to this character, because it's all about his trial, and this guy's about to go to trial in New York even. I think that this, and there's other deeper connections here, but the use of a fictional universe like the Batman story overlaid over the news cycles is not new. We're talking about a propaganda device. And so the Joker character was designed, I believe, to provide a narrative framework through which to interpret this Luigi story. And people were quick to jump onto it. It was immediately this oppressed person or representative of the oppressed class takes out one of the power, one of the elite. You know, kill the rich is justified. They're tattooing him on their bodies. They're worshiping him. They're dressing like him. It's really ripped out of the Joker script. And then there are other elements here. The CEO shooting that connects to this broader narrative we've talked about with the shooting of Trump. The 47-story hotel where Trump had his acceptance speech. And the pictures they're showing us, like they're showing us pictures of Luigi being escorted, and he's compared directly to Lee Harvey Oswald. So why are these comparisons being made? Well, the Oswald thing is something we've talked about since the 4th of July parade, where Robert Crimo shot everyone up. And Robert Crimo, of course, has the Oswald picture on his wall. And let me bring this up because Synchro was present. He called this out. So 26 days before the shooting, here is Synchro. The Oswald callback tells me that Luigi whacking the healthcare CEO is likely foreshadowing another fake Trump assassination attempt. Remember this headline 26 days before the killing. So here's a headline a month before the Luigi shoots the CEO. It says, incoming Trump presidency threatens millions of Americans' healthcare plans. And clearly, that's Trump's head in crosshairs. Like the Secret Service ought to be visiting U.S. News. They ought to be visiting Alex Soros. All these instances of direct threats implied via predictive, or whatever we call it, predictive programming. But this imagery is put out there. So it's like this is a contiguous story. Congress not to renew extended ACA coverage next year, and Trump's concepts of a plan for the U.S. So they already have this overlapping storyline, but the Oswald callback with the shooter is notable. And like with any PSYOP actor, you have to look at the photos that they present, the way they characterize them. Now, I might have brought this up the other day. Christopher Nolan is going to be releasing The Odyssey. So I'm expecting this might have some relevance to our conversation here, insofar as the Boeing disaster in space with the stranded astronauts, Butch and Sonny, is it Williams? Yeah, they're both stranded, and it's because they went up in the Calypso, which is the name of the Butch Wilmore and Cindy Williams. It's the name of the nymph that keeps Odysseus prisoner for 7 years, strands him. So he's stranded. So we were talking about the Odyssey and the Space Odyssey, and we're thinking, well, what's next? You know, and so I've actually recently, I picked up a copy of the Odyssey, thinking it might have some interesting insight into what's to come. Because we're talking about this notion that these individuals are not in space. It's all just theater. But for Christopher Nolan to be producing this, I don't know. It's not something to overlook. Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan are hugely represented in terms of predictive programming. I use the term metascriptors. All right, let's continue. We have quite a few notes, and then I want to get through my Twitter feed. I've got a ton of things I've been going over. So this was the story from the other day. We were talking about the idea that the person who was burned on the subway was using Zell gel. It's called a naked burn gel. It's a special effect tool. They use these in movies because it looks better than CGI. And it's safe under controlled conditions to cover yourself in a naked burn gel. So think back to Maxwell Zrella, who set himself on fire 4/19/2024 outside the courthouse where Trump was. It's the anniversary of Waco, where 33-year-old Dave Koresh was incinerated. Trump kicked off his campaign in Waco. Waco radicalized Timothy McVeigh, who was executed, again, 6/11/2001 at 33. We talk about these numbers because they are code. It does actually tell you something. There's consistency in it. But it's like the type of stuff, not quite Easter eggs, but I would say internal communication, almost like inside jokes. So in this case, we were suggesting that this event looked fake based on people's reactions to it. The story, the 33-year-old illegal immigrant setting somebody on fire, perfectly tailored to the right, outrage bait and all that. Then the subway. And I talk about the significance of the subway, how to the right wing, the subways are threatening. It represents the underclass rising up. Joker kills those guys in the subway. The Batman movie starts in the subway. Frank James fires off 33 rounds in the subway when the Batman movie kicks off. So we've been looking at this theme. Jordan Neely being strangled in the subway by Daniel Penny, right-wing vigilante who's released the day Luigi, left-wing vigilante, goes into jail. So I don't presume any of these things to be real. So here's the story of the person burned by the illegal immigrant. They still have not identified this person. And they said they're going to have to rely on DNA. Well, someone noted that the subway car number is 9502. And 9502 happens to be a mask you wear for protecting yourself from harmful particulates in the air. So it's kind of like, could this be an inside joke? Is this an indicator of a hoax? Or just a coincidence? Kevin Mooring says, have you talked about the new George Floyd? Yeah, I saw that one. He was 43 years old. I'm like, why wasn't he 42? It just seems like in every one of these psyops, they have these obvious and overt uses, the number 42, and all these race war psyops. So why 43? Is it like with 33s, it's too obvious, so they got to adjust it? But yeah, I did notice that one. In fact, I'll pull that up here because it's egregious, and it just came out, and it appears to be the type of thing that would actually activate some kind of outrage. Although, I don't know about riots in the middle of the winter. I kind of feel like it's all just going to build up. So yeah, we will get to that one. Also want to mention this, that there was a mobilization of 1,000 National Guard troops in the subways. This was reported on Zero Hedge months ago. So why weren't the National Guard there to stop that event? Maybe they were there, and maybe that event was a psyop. That would be my thinking on it. Okay, so let's go and... Oh, here we go. Just a little heads up here. Christopher Nolan's next film adaptation of The Odyssey, starring Matt Damon. All right, there you go. I wonder if he's going to be Odysseus. I mean, he did the isolated Martian thing, so this could tie into it. Okay, I have a lot of things to go through here. This is a great example of the type of propaganda we're being hit with today. Words can be weapons. Hashtag no to hate. We're not supposed to use hashtags anymore. Words can be weapons. Hate speech online can lead to cruelty and violence in real life. Now, this is from the UN. And if you remember last year, I said that X, that Twitter becoming X, is meant to refer to the WHO's disease X, that they would introduce to the public the idea that mind viruses are making people violent, specifically right-wing hate. And we will therefore have to collectively agree to censor the internet, to mask our minds, to lock down the internet like we did in 2020 to the meatverse. We're going to lock down the metaverse because hate spreads. And the whole rage virus concept, which has been represented in various instances in films, generally with the ape. There's been this repeated theme. The rage monkey in Monkey Man, the whole 28 Days Later, and 28 Years Later is in theaters now. Well, I just saw the poster. I don't know if it's out yet. I need to go watch it. But anyway, words can be weapons, mind viruses. And the idea of the mind virus was introduced and popularized in recent years by Elon Musk, who described the woke mind virus. Well, there is no mind virus. The mind virus eliminates human agency. It's like, oh, you don't think, you just catch beliefs. That's why I say the public, I mean, they shouldn't exist. You should not be able to just catch a belief just by hearing it. But I'm saying that the public has been trained to be that way, that their mental immune system has been compromised. The government has given the public mind aids. Luckily, there's a cure. Now check this out. This is from Reddit conspiracy. Dr. Sigma says, I'm starting to think that the last Joker movie was kind of predictive programming for this, referring to Luigi. The accused is wildly popular. There's a crowd outside the courthouse protesting. In the movie, the trial is televised. And here we're getting images from the courtroom. We still need to see if Luigi will take his own defense and if there will be a bombing at the courthouse. So if you watch Joker 2, that is what happened. And people are tattooing this individual's face on their bodies. There are lookalike contests. Nobody has explained how the smiling guy at the Starbucks and Luigi are the same person, because in the pictures they first showed us, Luigi had a significant unibrow. Okay, I want to get to the more recent George Floyd. That's what it's looking like. Oh, let me play this too. This is interesting. So, do you remember when Ashley Babbitt was fake killed by Michael Bird? You know, the squib that failed? Like, it was like less than a teaspoon of fake blood. It's like one ketchup packet. One of the worst squibs I've ever seen. Ashley Babbitt's not dead. Her mom's a crisis actor. Trump's part of it. I can't believe people still need to be told this stuff. But here's a video that just surfaced. It's Ashley Babbitt walking by Michael Bird, the guy that shoots her in the neck, a minute later. And you know what he says to her? He says, "Have a nice day and stay safe."
We're telling everybody in there to mask up, though, so I'm pretty sure they're going to fucking gas us or some other fucking shit. We're going to see.
How you doing, man? Yeah. Stay safe, all right?
And there she is, wrapped in the American flag. What a joke. Yep. Have a nice day and stay safe. Which is probably code. Like, okay, coast is clear. We're going to run our PSYOP. We're going to do our PR stunt, which is what it really is. These are PR stunts. These aren't false flags. And the right is so brainwashed that they think that the only reason why people stormed the Capitol is because Ray Epps was telling people to run up the stairs. It's like, that is the dumbest thing. No, it was a closed movie set. Woo's News has exposed this ad nauseum, and he's dropping a part 3 on his series, where there's this speech at the Ellipse where Trump is telling people, you know, give him hell, fight, fight, fight. And while he's giving his speech, the riot has already started. The people who are there with Trump would have to walk 45 minutes to get to the Capitol. The whole thing was a closed movie set. The QAnon shaman, Alex Jones, Ray Epps, they're all in on it. Observing Reality said, I almost contracted mind AIDS on my way home to listen to IPS because Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis is on, and he was selling a bunch of BS about HARP and fear. Alt media gives us nothing but fear. Yeah, it's all doom and gloom. It really is. It's doom and gloom. It's fear porn. And the whole thing is based on, the whole mind war is based on fear. I mean, I take part in it for fun. Like, I was making these Happy 2025 AI renders because I'm like, is anybody here placing bets? Like, which major city is going to get pegged by a planet killer asteroid on New Year's Eve? So here's Happy New Year 2025, a big space rock coming down on what looks to be New York. And for those of you reality impaired NASA fans, this is CGI. You got to tell them because they don't know. Here's another one hitting a building. This is all Grok, by the way. Happy New Year 20. Grok is really good with font and words. And I've created business cards with Grok. But anyway, I post these on my Twitter feed. So if you want to see videos of space rocks hitting big cities on New Year's Eve, you know where to go. Where did all the drones go? NYPD still unable to identify the female victim in the subway fire. That's funny. All the right-wingers were sharing some image of some Aryan princess and like an immigrant killed a white woman, and they racialized this stuff. It's really pathetic. And it's kind of a good thing that the Groypers, Nick Fuentes' army of trolls, have all been banned on Twitter. They're all crying about it. X suspends Project Groyper accounts as Musk promises to nuke spammers. So Groypers are the followers of Nick Fuentes, they're characterized by their griping. I call them gripers. It's all grievance politics. They worship a frog and they hate Israel and stuff. But it turns out that these are all bots, and they've been detected and they're being flushed. So I'm hoping a lot of these chemtrail bots go next. So here's a couple of astronauts. When did Don Petit get up there? Like, is he stranded as well? Like, how do they have all these other astronauts coming and going, but then Butch and Suni are stranded? Doesn't make sense. Stranded NASA astronaut shares a Christmas selfie. Yeah, okay. Good thing they packed their Christmas hats back in May in case they were stranded until Christmas. 8-day planned trip in the summer, but they brought their Santa gear. So I don't like this individual, but the QAnon shaman is here talking about how to identify a psyop. It's just way too ironic and ridiculous and surreal to ignore. It's a clown show. I mean, this guy's, he's in his full regalia, smells like roadkill, covered in makeup like an American flag. I mean, this is just, I don't know. But he's taken seriously by everybody. So here he is talking about neurolinguistic programming, which he misdescribes. It's kind of a clown show, but they take this stuff seriously over in Trutherville. So the Q shaman's some kind of an expert on psyops. And it's like, what a joke. This guy is a psyop. He's a walking, talking hoax. There's nothing real about this person. The idea that he even served time is a joke. But here he is.
Based on 3 factors. Number 1 is neuro-linguistic programming. That is the use of certain words, linguistics, to program the neurons or the pattern of neurons in the brain, in particular the subconscious.
It's really hard to take him serious with the buffalo costume and the white power tattoos. I mean, this is the face of January 6th. And anyway, Ashley Babbitt's not dead. QAnon shaman is an actor. And he carried a sign that said, Q sent me. How come nobody's asking who Q is?
This portion of the brain to affect the way that a person consciously perceives reality. Okay. Number 2, you have something called critical factor bypass. Critical factor bypass is where you saturate the entirety of the environment.
This guy was pushing 5D reality upgrades, Nasara, Gassara, QAnon, alien, Pleiadians coming down to take out the deep state, adrenochrome vampires ousted. He was pushing all the craziest crap, spelled with a Q, back in 2019, 2020. And now he's trying to appear sane. It's kind of a joke. At times, it's almost like he is taking a Chat GPT word salad version of like a David Icke rant. But I don't know how he's taken so seriously. Okay, let's move on. I'm trying to find the clip where we can talk about this next. Again, I'm not inclined to think that they could pull off another riot at this time of the year, but they could certainly build up the narrative to support it. So a number of people are looking at the lack of footprints in the snow. Yes, so a couple of things. So we're talking about Antarctica. Let's go back to the final experiment. So a number of people are saying that there are a lack of footprints.
People are doing things, and obviously they've left tracks in the snow.
So it looks like there's some prefabricated tracks in the snow, or it looks like, I don't know, looks like there's some tracks there, but when they come walking in, so you see these individuals and their feet, they're walking around, and there's no marks.
Now, there's a lot of people are pointing out evidence that this is fabricated.
So there appears to be a lack of, and so that then the other side will say, well, the snow is so hard that there's no footprints. Okay, well, then others will say, well, no, there are footprints. You can see them here. So it's like, well, which is it? Should there be or should there not be? But then someone else asked Grok, like, what am I looking at here? And he asked about this because there's these straight lines in the snow. And here's what Grok said. Snow grooming machines, or snowcats. These distribute snow evenly across the surface. They move in straight lines to create a smooth, consistent snow surface. The lines in the tracks are left by the grooming equipment. Then you have snow guns that spray in a specific direction, and they can create parallel lines of snow as they distribute across the area. Artificial snow surfaces. Indoor ski centers and snow parks, it's laid down mechanically, and the machinery used in the process may lead to the formation of straight lines in the snow. So according to Grok, this snow on the ground has been groomed. And this might explain why Whitsitt had to go to an ice chest to get snow. Because if he had picked up snow from beneath his feet, you would have seen the tile floor beneath Antarctica. Look at that. Again, I'm not alleging this is fake. I'm just pointing out where other people are saying it's fake. We have to talk about what people are talking about because that's what we do here. Lori, a.k.a. Radical Skeptic, joins us from X. Says, the female astronaut Sony has been on 2 6-month-long missions on the ISS. Once interviewed, she could do a year, no problem. All fake. She has never been on the ISS. Yeah, I think the limiting factor is how much hairspray they have to keep that look. We're talking about Medusa. And you know what? There are people who say that they could not possibly be hanging from wires because of the flips they do. Therefore, space is real. And I would say no. Just because you don't know how the magic trick is performed doesn't mean you have to default to magic. We just don't know how the trick is performed. And we're talking about Christopher Nolan and the Odyssey. Well, Christopher Nolan's movie Inception has a behind the scenes because they have this rotating set, and they create 0G effects with no CGI and no wires. Uses a seesaw and a counterweight. So I think we figured out how they do the ISS. I think it's a rotating movie set. But still, some of them are stuck on the whole hairspray thing. One of their worst special effects, and it's aging poorly, and I'm wondering how Tom Cruise is going to do his hair when he gets on the ISS. Is he going to hairspray it up all ridiculous? Like, I can't wait. Laura Loomer has been limited on X. Yeah, Laura Loomer, I only bring her up because she's a prominent world stage character. She's hyped up from predictive programming for the Trump head wound. And among other things, she's represented in the movie The Madness. So The Madness was on Netflix right before the CEO shooting. And in it, a CEO who obviously represents Musk is financing right-wing Nazis, and he influences the election. And he gets killed, and it's seen as a justified vigilante act. So you have this build-up, the CEO gets killed, and it obviously is based on Elon Musk. So that's interesting because you've seen sentiments like this on Blue Sky where they're creating images of Musk being shot and they think CEOs getting killed is a good thing. And again, this came out right before the shooting and it was the #1 Netflix. So I knew it would contain significant features. 3D printed weapons. What did Luigi use? The whole ghost gun thing. So moreover, in addition to the CEO character who's obviously based on Musk, he's financing a character who looks like Stu Peters. He's the leader of the group called The Forge, and he's called Brother 14. Well, Nick Fuentes is the leader of America First. And I'm thinking, he looks like Stu Peters, but I think he's based on Fuentes. And what just happened with Fuentes? Someone went to his house to kill him. So in this show, it's these right-winger types getting killed. From the CEO, representing Musk, to the Nick Fuentes, Stu Peters guy getting dismembered. And then Laura Loomer has a character in The Madness, and that character would be Lauren Jennings, a right-wing conspiracy theorist, journalist type, who ends up being killed with some kind of a nerve agent that simulates a heart attack. So I'm looking at Laura Loomer, and now she's run afoul of Elon Musk, where he addressed her directly, and he said, Loomer is trolling for attention, ignore. And she said, Musk, read the room, you bought your way into MAGA 5 minutes after Trump's head was nearly blown off. Remember, you voted for Biden, and you propped up DeSantis, and you said Trump was too old. So here she is attacking Musk. So this is all getting interesting, because there are suggestions that the killing in The Madness of the Brother Forge was an inside job. That the Musk character had to have his own extremists killed before they exposed his connections. So this is, again, life imitating art, life imitating Netflix. No, it's psyops imitating Netflix. So we have seen in the #1 movie that was on Netflix right before the CEO shooting a storyline that has Musk getting killed, Fuentes getting killed, Loomer getting killed. Something to look forward to 2025. Yeah, Tom Cruise is going to the ISS to film some movie pretty soon. Kevin Mooring says Loomer is going to get the bird flu soon. Right. Immortal Al says they never provided explanations for why their helmets fill with water, so they had to add a snorkel. Right, they said it had something to do with the air conditioning unit, but there are things they can't undo. And we can take down the ISS at any time. Light diffusion. Look at any spacewalk and compare the video quality or the quality of a docking. Compare the lighting to any of the photography from the ISS looking at the Earth, where from the photos and the still shots of the astronauts outside, you can see the astronauts, you can see the arm of the space station, you see the Earth in the background, you can see continents, you can see chemtrails, you can see detail. But on the video on the spacewalks, on their helmet cams, you can only see 50 feet, and then space is just absorbed into darkness. It's like everything gets absorbed. The docking, you see the capsule going away, and it just disappears into the dark. I'm like, wait a minute here. How come I can see hundreds of miles in the photographs, but on the video outside, when you're doing your quote spacewalks, the light gets absorbed? So I compared the spacewalk footage to deep sea underwater divers doing their studies of manta rays at night. And what you'll find is that there's the same quality of footage. And what you're seeing here is the light loss. Light underwater doesn't travel as far. It has a different quality in terms of the reflections and the highlights, the exposure. It screws everything up. And even the way that the bubbles look when you see these scuba divers looking at manta rays is very similar to the bubbles you see around the astronauts. But I think it's a dead giveaway. But yes, Tom Cruise is making a movie right now called Deep, something at the bottom of the ocean, and then he's going up. It's all interesting because there's a lot of correlation here between the ISS and the Titanic in symbolism and in this broader story, which we often talk about. You know, we talk about the integration of entertainment media and future fake news and the big psyops, which become, you know, these are the most viewed events at any time, like the 9/11, for example. They're preceded by decades of preparation, but the directors that are involved give themselves away. And they give away the subtext, and they give away layers to the story. So the Twin Towers wasn't just a terror attack and the towers falling. It was a metaphor, like the sinking of the Titanic. It had broader implications. So it's not a coincidence that James Cameron, whose movie Titanic in 1997 foreshadowed the Twin Towers sinking in the way that the Titanic split in two and you had jumpers. Not a coincidence that on 9/11/2001, James Cameron was at the wreckage of the Titanic. So he was there that day, filming a documentary called Ghosts in the Abyss. And we've drawn connections between the significance of the Abyss in this context, the Challenger. He's in the Deep Sea Challenger submersible in the Abyss. We've connected this with Revelation 9/11. And it's all this interrelated story. But part of the story is the International Space Station as emblematic of world unity, of one language, one mission from Earth to the heavens, but it's a Tower of Babel story. Man's hubris, like the Titanic, too big to fail. Well, not quite. And so what I think we're being prepared for is something that's been alluded to in a recent movie, the Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola, which actually contains footage from 9/11. This is a movie that was going to come out before 9/11, but he said 9/11 ruined it, basically, because the movie contains New York being destroyed. So he kind of put it on hold for 20 years. But that movie does have this idea of a Russian satellite destroying New York. There's the idea of this has been really emphasized in the last year. There's a movie that came out last January 19th called the ISS, where Russia and America have to fight for control of the space station because they're fighting on the ground. Interestingly, right now, because there's a leak on the Russian side of the space station, they have a hatch they had to close between the two sides. So you have this symbolic separation of America and the astronauts and the cosmonauts. So it's interesting considering it's been less than a year since that movie came out. And by the way, when that movie was about to come out, as I heard it was in production, I said, watch the hair. Are they going to hairspray the hair up like Cindy Williams? Or are they going to, in some way, CGI the hair to make it look realistic? And you know what they did? They slicked it back. There was not one loose hair in that movie. And I think they didn't want to have the fake hair, the CGI hair, because it would have made the ISS look phony by comparison. And they knew that we were watching. And I also noted that the way that people floated around was crappy compared to most science fiction films. In other words, it seemed to me that they dumbed down their special effects so they wouldn't make the ISS look terrible. That was a factor in the ISS, if you've seen it. Terrible movie, came out last January 19th. No, they have not identified the burn victim in subway car 9502. Strange story. I find it very unbelievable. And one more point about that. The people using burn gel, naked burn gel, Zell gel, they hold their breath while they're on fire. So you have to supply screams from an audio track. You can't scream because you're holding your breath. Okay, let me see if I can find some information regarding this last atrocity with the New York police. The story is, though, they're on camera beating somebody up, and they're later reported to be dead. And is it fakeable? Yeah, obviously. I mean, World Wrestling Entertainment held people in thrall for how long before they were having to reveal that it was fake? Like, yeah, obviously you can fake anything on camera. This particular killing or beating, which resulted in the person's death, was on December the 9th. Let me see if I can pull this up. Okay, here we go. Body cam. New York officers fatally beating prisoner. His name was Robert Brooks. Shocking body cam video. He died a day after being attacked by correctional officers at the Marcy Correctional Facility on December 9th. Their audio was not on, so you don't hear anything, but you do see it. They strip him down to his underwear. They beat him. Very egregious. One of them puts his hand on a counter and then kicks the guy. So it's a beating executed by a gang that apparently does this routinely. Not the first incident with them. So we'll see what happens with this, but the thing I would take away from it, because I look at the symbolism, I look at the iconography, the people grinning, and in one of the images, he's in his underwear on the table, looking kind of like this reoccurring theme that you see of the like a black Christ. There's this Christification, this martyr thing. And I want to remind you too that just a few months ago, the movie Rebel Ridge came out. And Rebel Ridge is about a racist police gang. And the main character is beaten and robbed by the police. And he takes revenge. He's a former Marine, gets revenge on them. So this movie comes out, and it's about this type of situation, and it's the opening scene. Well, a few days after Rebel Ridge, Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins football player, had been pulled over on camera and beaten by the police. Treated roughly. Tyreek Hill's traffic citation dismissed after officers no-show. But the body cam footage was described by many people as shocking. And they said it was a pattern of behavior. The cops who roughhoused Tyreek Hill attacked others, slammed women on patrol car. So they had a habit of doing this. The police officers who dragged NFL player from his car. So there were comparisons immediately drawn. Because again, life follows Netflix. or more likely, psyops, fake events follow Netflix. You see the pattern here? Netflix isn't predicting reality. Reality isn't mirroring the entertainment. That's not what's happening here. These are coordinated releases. One in fiction, one on the news, which is assumed to be real. But the first one gets you to react emotionally to the situation. So if you watch the Tyreek Hill thing and you had just seen Rebel Ridge, in your frame of reference is the idea of entrenched racist gangs operating within the police departments, and it's systemic, the idea of systemic racism. So again, this event just happened, and you can't separate any mainstream story from whatever preceded it in Netflix. So the story's already here. And this one isn't just some officer, some single bad apple. No, this again, like in Rebel Ridge, infers a gang, a big group of individuals who are all in on it. Hey, here's an interesting and weird coincidence. So I was walking down to the river the other day, and I was thinking about predictive programming, as we often talk about it here. And, I was just thinking about how we interpret it and ways to describe it, because I think it's not contentious, but it's a very misunderstood phenomenon. Anyway, I was down by the river, and I found this. It's a Jack Chick tract, and it says "Bewitched." So, having looked into it on Twitter, Anissa had actually found that precise tract. And interestingly enough, what is it about? This particular one has this in it. It has some individual talking to, looks like I guess it's the devil. But he says, "Why are those reruns so important, Master?" And he says, "Because," I lost the page here. Basically says it's programming people to accept witchcraft. The whole thing was basically talking about how they use TV to program people, and that we're bewitched by media. Kind of an interesting coincidence there. If you haven't seen Jack Chick tracks, there are these cartoon tracks meant to scare you away from Halloween and Christmas. Kind of a buzzkill. Okay, let's move on. Trying to get through my minds.com links. I've been finding a lot of good content regarding fakeability of space, and the ability to fake space has just increased exponentially since they've moved beyond mere green screen. So here's a great video, Liars on Wires. So whatever you think about Antarctica and the 24-hour sun and Wits It, Vapes It, the ISS is still fake as hell. Nothing that they showed you in Antarctica makes the ISS real. They seem to think that this is a slam dunk. Like, if we could just show this, then we've proven that the moon landing's real, that the Mars rovers aren't fake, and that the ISS is real. It's like, no, not even close. And you know what's sad about it is that the Gloobers legitimately believe everything on the news. So not only are they fooled by the big picture psyops, but even if we granted them that and said, no, it's all true, the Earth's a ball, NASA's not lying. Okay, even if that's the case, they're still clueless about the news on the ground, about the psyop entertainment complex. So many of you probably have heard about the military-industrial complex and how bad that is. And I would suggest that there is something that's more powerful than the so-called military-industrial complex, and that would be the psyop entertainment complex. So in a couple of days, I'm going to release my next ebook. It's called Lie World. Lie World, which is also the name of a comic strip that I do. But this is my attempt to break down my concept of what media is, and to create, or rather expound on, a philosophical framework that one would need to consume media as an active critical thinker, instead of the default passive propaganda receptacle where you're essentially, your immune system is essentially compromised, where you're just a receptacle for any kind of belief. I mean, look at the drone panic. Nobody's talking about the drone panic, and nobody's talking about how nobody's talking about it. As in, it was a big deal. Everybody's paying attention to it globally. And then it stops because something else is the next current thing. But nobody's talking about the sudden absence of drones. So how does that work? Like, is it the case that the drones disappeared? What happened? And all those who are promoting the drones like it was a real thing are suddenly unconcerned. Like, again, how does this just get swept under the rug? It just makes my point for me here. That the masses are reality compromised, and they don't know how to discern real and fake. It's, to them, they have to know the blue check to follow. They have to trust somebody. Yes, Tim Truth, the Nolan's next film is The Odyssey. I have a copy of The Odyssey for this reason. And I think it's relevant because, again, Calypso capsule, stranded astronauts, Calypso kept Odysseus trapped, and, of course, the Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey. We're talking about our collective journey through space. So I was thinking about the story and, like, what happens after he gets away from Calypso? Well, then he confronts the Cyclops, and he gets cursed in the name of Cyclops' dad, the Poseidon. So I thought, well, Poseidon and the sea. Okay, so the travel across the sea could symbolize space. But at the same time, the Poseidon may be a reference to this Kraken, to the weapon that the Russians have, the submarine that could take out a coastal city. So I think there may be something foreshadowed here. And you have to consider, too, that it's Christopher Nolan. And Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan, you got Oppenheimer, you got Fallout. It's all about the nukes with them. So I think there's some significance to the fact that they're working on this particular movie right now. Drones are off for the holidays, Tim, says Kevin Mooring. Yeah, look, if I made a big deal about it, like if I'm like, the sky is falling, and then the next day I change the subject, someone needs to hold me accountable. Like, you had us riled up. You told us to put on our space junk helmets. You are now changing the subject like it's no longer a threat. Like, no, you can't have that. There has to be some continuity. There has to be some accountability. This is why I'm sick of the chemtrail alarmists, because they're all anonymous. None of them are accountable, and they don't do any kind of documentation. Like, oh, here's a scary cloud. Well, okay, give me your date, time, location. Let's match it up with a flight tracker. See what plane did that. It's just fear-mongering, rumor-mongering. And yeah, Nolan did The Dark Knight Rises with the foreshadowing and the countdown. So if you haven't seen that, I put out a recent article on my blog here, and I highlighted that particular thing. It was, how can we confidently call news fake? And it's because I heard this argument, which I consider to be lazy, which is, how do I know that it happened? I wasn't there. Like, okay, you have to give yourself some more credit. You are capable of perceiving things. You can reason things through. You can weigh the value of different claims. And that's what we do here. We weigh claims. Like, I don't just say everything's fake. That's lazy. But I will say that in my informed opinion, there's no reason to believe this is true. Whereas the person who believes in it says, I believe in it because I saw it on TV. So what weighs more? The blind faith, low information belief, or the informed disbelief of the skeptic? And of course, obviously, it's us. And look at these headlines. I mentioned these last week. New Jersey residents are suffering from alarming mystery illnesses, dizziness, nausea, and headaches from seeing drones. The symptoms reported include headaches, dizziness, and nausea from seeing drones because they believed, because of Joe Rogan, that the drones were hunting for a missing nuke, that it was detecting radiation. So people hear this and they respond. That's why I know that when they fake the nuke in Seattle or wherever they do it, they're going to lock down the world. They're going to say, yep, the winds are blowing the fallout, everybody locked down, and everybody's going to come down with radiation sickness. It's going to be worse than the 2020 thing. And it's all just psychosomatic. It's psychosomatic. Okay, let me get to my point here in this article about our confidence in calling news fake. And so we're talking about this stuff, and I wanted to bring up that the predictive programming for future events is being done by directors who don't have a lot of plausible deniability for their direct involvement in what they would have to know to be government propaganda. In other words, they know that their movie serves a bigger propaganda purpose in that it's going to steer the public to accept a future psyop, a future fake news event. So I brought this up in Batman Rises. I mean, how clear is this? It's not for you. It's to protect the people you care about. Where he says, if you're working alone, wear a mask. So here's Batman telling his friend to wear a mask. Then he gives him a ball with spikes on it. And he says, count to 5 and throw. Well, I would interpret this as the COVID ball. If you're working alone, wear a mask. And so he counts to 5, and I take this to mean 2025. You got 2020, count to 5. What happens in 2025? Well, the very next thing, the smoke bomb becomes a mushroom cloud. So this is 2012. This is 10 years before Oppenheimer. Same director, foreshadowing, and this is not a coincidence. It's like, oh, I coincidentally foreshadowed that I would be involved in the movie about this big mushroom cloud. No, the atomic bomb Oppenheimer movie wasn't even talked about at this point, but Nolan directs it years later, and then his brother does Fallout. So what I'm just suggesting here is that there is an intention behind all of these that are purely political, and they all pertain to future historic events that are fabricated. Again, fake news is not just fake news, it's fake history. They fake a big event, a big terror attack, they get to write the news cycles for the next 10 years. After 9/11, you have the post-9/11 world, where it was constantly terror attacks, radical Islam, clash of civilizations, all kinds of narrative spin-offs. So the fake news events may be few and far between as far as these big ones, but they steer the bigger narrative. They steer the focus. That's why I say that our worldview is a product not just of the overt lies, but also of its selective attention and what it focuses on, and also, of course, what it omits. So I have a series of videos here that I've been looking at, liars on wires, and here's another example of fakery. This guy here, he's swallowing what look like CGI balls in space. And watch how this ball disappears in his mouth. And it doesn't disappear in the way that it should disappear as a bubble popping. It's like they literally just, it was an artifact, and they just ended the frame. They just ended it in one single frame. It didn't fade out properly. I have a long list of these ISS clips that are worth looking at. Yeah. So if you're looking at the screen, I think this guy's got an augmented virtual reality bubble. I don't think it's really there. So this astronaut is swallowing this bubble. You see how it's right there on his bottom lip? And I'll try to zoom in on this. And then the very next frame, it disappears. Anyway, we could go over these all day. We have to do a cyber symposium and just specifically focus on ISS glitches. So whatever you think about the 24-hour sun, it didn't add to the credibility of any of their other claims whatsoever. And I'm not surprised that nobody is believing it. I haven't seen anybody here in the chat say that they were convinced by Witsit Gitsit and Jaren's expedition. If you have been convinced, let me know. And one thing I will say too, again, anybody who says, yeah, that 100% convinced me. They went to Antarctica and flat Earth is dead. The conversation's over. Anybody who says that doesn't know that news is fake. Like, they're essentially situationally unaware. They're naive. I mean, what else can you call it? Kevin Mooring says those kids getting hit by fallen drones should have had helmets. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing. Might be something. There's something with the drones falling. Like, there were drones falling in people in China. There were drones killing people somewhere in the Middle East, supposedly. But yeah, the drone story also connected with that Navy game where they showed this drone commercial. So it is a psyop. It is a hoax. but it just shows how the public is so gullible, triggerable. Like I said before, you could play Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. Just play it, start to finish, on a radio station, and the public will panic. Verk Jones says, I'm convinced they faked it. Tim Truth, the last experiment ever. Charming Anarchist says, 24-hour sun does not contradict a flat earth. Well, I don't know how to explain that. I mean, how would you explain the lighting situation? So I haven't figured it out, but my take on it is suspend judgment, because we don't have enough information. It's safe to say we don't have enough information. And this is true for anything on the news. Like, if you want to be accurate, you see something on TV, you read a headline. Do you have enough information to know it's true? No, you know it's alleged. You can believe it if you trust the source. It might be a reliable claim. It may not be an extraordinary claim. There may not be a reason to disbelieve. I mean, it's kind of nuanced when it comes down to it, but believing by default should not be a thing. And we should be able to recognize that I don't have enough information to know for sure, but I trust these guys, so I'm going to say yes. And in this case, I just don't have enough information. Plain Dakota says you don't have to explain it. Well, I would like an explanation, but I think that a lot of this debate has been built on a either-or fallacy, a false either-or, where it's like it's either this or that, and that happens to be a straw man. So it's a model that you're not believing versus a straw man that nobody has that no one can actually verify. And the straw man is the AE map with the circling sun, which has just built-in presuppositions, like it was made to fall. And I also want to point out that none of these debates discuss the elephant in the room, which is special effects. You look at NASA and the science and the space program, oh, it's all just science. No, science doesn't use special effects. Movie magic got us to the moon, not science. There's a point where science ends and movie magic begins. I happen to think it's the Kármán line. Once you get about 62 miles, it's all movie magic. Laura, aka Radical Skeptic, says, Jaron paid Duffy back for the trip, $40K. That's what convinced me of the fakery. Like he has a spare $40K. Well, people are saying that Dearth needs to give Jaron his 3 Bitcoins, because Dearth said if you can prove a flat earth false, you get 3 Bitcoins. But I don't think he's given it up yet. I haven't heard any formal statements. Like, I've been waiting for a press release. Like Mark Sargent should be at a press release. He should be on CNN or something. Just going on a media junket. Like, this is what I think now. Like, this is the state of flat earth. But there's no one to speak for it. And the final word is basically Jaron's word as far as the mainstream media, they're saying. And it's kind of it's being treated as a joke. Although there is some nod to the fact that Witsit Gets It is still suggesting it's not conclusive. But it's far from over. Okay, let's see. I have a video of Kenneth Copeland drinking his own blood. I know it's not in context, but let me just play it really quick. Kenneth Copeland cutting his hand, and he puts his blood in the wine.
That's the cutting. Yes, sir.
Now his blood is in my body.
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't know what that is. Strange. Just religious stuff. Don't get it. That's Kenneth Copeland drinking blood. I saw this rant where he said he's going to live to 120, which wouldn't surprise me. There's something animating him. I mean, he could stay animated, living or not, I would say. Okay, let's continue here. I'm going through my feed. Here's the thing I was talking about. This is Luigi and Lee Harvey Oswald. So we were talking about the Joker connections with Luigi. And then the Deadpool connection and Deadpool, Wade Wilson, and then Wade Wilson, the serial killer with all the female fans with a Joker tattoo on his face. So here's Oswald. And I want to point out that Stanley Kubrick directed the JFK assassination, which was fake. And 2 months before the JFK assassination, he staged his own fake death with Jackie Kennedy and a bunch of Heinz 57 with the help of some Secret Service agents. Like they were clowning the whole thing before it happened. If you read that Vanity Fair article. But the Oswald connection is interesting here because in Full Metal Jacket, a Kubrick film, there are several allusions to the JFK assassination and Oswald. And the main character in Full Metal Jacket has a target on the side of his head, which relates to both JFK's head wound and the 45-47 on the side of Trump's head, where the shooter was aiming. Interestingly, that character with the target on his head who represents JFK is called Joker, played by Matthew Modine. And Matthew Modine is in Stranger Things. Season 4, Episode 8, season finale, he gets killed, which is kind of interesting because 4-8 and Season 4, Episode 8 of The Boys has the Homelander, same situation, Trump comparisons. We've picked up on these patterns, and it relates to these various actors, but I just thought there's kind of a rabbit trail here if you want to follow it with Oswald and Kubrick. And when Oswald entered the world stage again in 2022 at the 4th of July parade with the guy with the 47 tattooed on the side of his head, shooting up the parade while his mom's at Target. And then you look at a picture of his mom. She's got a bag with the Target symbol on it. Her son's the sniper. And the target looks like the one on Joker's helmet. No coincidences. And then Robert Crimo, the shooter who had been spending time at Trump rallies, had a newspaper picture on his wall of Oswald. He idolized Oswald. But when that happened, and this was again, summer of 2022, I said, Lee Harvey Oswald has entered the world stage again. And we've been keeping track of any significant mentions of Lee Harvey Oswald. And at the last Super Bowl, interestingly enough, the 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy was in the headlines because people were noticing that he looks like Lee Harvey Oswald. So let me play this clip.
Side pictures of you and Lee Harvey Oswald circling around the internet right now. People think you two look alike. Did you ever hear that before?
I haven't. That's my first time hearing it. Yeah.
What do you think about it?
So they force memed it, and he does look like Lee Harvey Oswald. And there are layers that we could add on to this. I don't want to go too far down this right now, but I just want to point out that the specter of Lee Harvey Oswald had been floating around Trump since 2022, and this is just another example of it. No, it's not too late to call. I will open up my phones. We still have another 10 minutes if you want to call in. 505-510-4226. We're mostly talking about Vapegate. Vapegate, and the idea here is that Witsit Vapes was caught possibly faking his breath being visible because he's in Antarctica, but he's really in the Vegas sphere. So that's what we want to know. That's what we're trying to figure out with this Vapegate. So here's my article where you have the correlation between the Joker character and Luigi. Here he is pictured in a cab. Looks like Joker in the cab. He's been compared, I think the Hollywood Insider compared him to Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver. And Taxi Driver is the basis for Joker. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, this is Nick Finger.
Hey, what's up? What's your take on Vapegate?
I mean, I did see a video on that this morning before I went to work, and from, I don't know, I forget which channel, one of the Flat Earthers, and, you know, I mean, where he's supposedly hitting the vape, yeah, it's on a time lapse, so you can't really tell. But like, I mean, my thought on that is like, okay, it's super dry down there, so, but if he went inside to get his gloves, where everybody else is in that room, you know, 5, 10 guys, however many there are in that little room, then there's a lot more moisture in the air. So, I mean, if he took some deep breaths in there and came out, it seems like there would be some more moisture right when he came out. But the reason I was calling was to throw it out there that what if the final experiment has nothing to do with the 24-hour sun, and it's just their final experiment on how to get the flat earthers to all fight each other?
Well, that kind of succeeded, if that's the case. It does seem like there's been a great deal of division, and I see that, Jaron called out deep inside the rabbit hole, and these are like BFFs forever, going back 10 plus years, and they're breaking up over it. So it does seem like it's creating a bit of a schism, but I do see, and I didn't expect this, I do see a lot of people who are going through this thing as though it's fake or fakeable, and they're investigating it on that premise. So the loyalty factor isn't there. There's no one there who's just trusting it because it's Jaron. So that's I think that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do have more. I have been on team with it. I mean, I've seen all the stuff that guy's done over the years, and I've always been somewhat of a fan of him. So I would like to think that he didn't come and blow a vape out. But that's just my own personal bias.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know him very well. I know that he debates on this matter quite a bit. And one of the things that's been missing from these debates, and I find this to be questionable, is they don't talk about special effects. They'll debate globe science versus this alternative science that challenges it. But it's like, I don't think you can discredit or debunk a model from within the model. I think that we need more information.
I've heard Witsit talking about special effects before. I mean, particularly about ISS stuff and space stuff.
But they don't in the debates, not in the debates where it matters.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard his kind of his debates, like him talking about his debate strategies and stuff. And I mean, he tries to keep it pretty black and white in the debate.
Sure, they want to keep it. But it says they're debating according to the rules set by the globe side, and the globe side doesn't even allow in the conversation the inclusion that any special effects were used. Their base assumption, and everybody has to play by this rule, is that the video from NASA is to be considered evidence. They don't even include it as a possibility in the debates where it matters, even though outside of this they may call stuff fake all day, but it's outside the purview of the globe side in these debates. Like, I try to talk to McToon about it, and every time I would show him some anomaly, he would say, "That's not my claim. That's not my claim." They just hand wave it away. So it's futile.
Yeah.
And it's not an intellectually honest debate.
McToon's a goofball. But speaking of special effects in space, I came across a video recently that I think it's probably from May of last year, but it's a SpaceX video, and it looks like that in the background, like as the rocket's flying up and the camera is pointing down, it looks like a dragon flies into view and then flies off. Kind of like that mouse thing. Have you seen this dragon one?
No, I'd like to get that clip, because there was a video where somebody said they said they saw a dragon in space, and it was the same year, it might have been 2021, that they sent a bunch of baby octopuses into space. And I thought it was interesting because I saw footage of what was purported to be a dragon, and I thought that's ridiculous, because in space a dragon wouldn't be flapping its wings. But the way that it moved actually looked like an octopus in low light. So I think we were looking at an octopus moving across the water, and that it looked like wings flapping. So I think there might be an octopus in the ISS tank. But if you can send me that clip.
This one wasn't to space yet. It was like going up through the clouds, and it had a camera pointing down. And I mean, like I've been wanting to look into it a little more and see if there was maybe Game of Thrones was premiering or something that week, and they're just like, like with the mouse thing.
Okay, they would do that because they've done it with the mouse gate. They're sending genetically modified muscular mice to space. They called it Mighty Mouse, the Mighty Mouse mission. And then you see the mouse on the outside of the rocket. I could see them doing the dragon. And there was one clip that I probably have somewhere in which somebody seems to be falling off the rocket, like falling to the earth. And it's clearly some kind of CGI artifact that was inserted there as some kind of an inside joke, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me. I'd like to see a dragon. I would like to see it.
Yeah, I'll try to find the clip. It's kind of hard to find because when you look up SpaceX Dragon, it's like that's what one of their rockets is called or something.
Exactly.
So you get all those clips. But I was watching a video about like, are dragons real? And that's where I saw that one clip. Like, this, like, well, dragons might be real because on the SpaceX video we see one fly into the frame. What else could that be? But yeah, they're not taking into account.
Okay, I think I found it. Dragon spotted during, I might have found this one, during NASA's SpaceX rocket launch. Okay, last week I found it here. Resembling a large winged animal seems to pass beneath it. I'll take a look at this one. And have you seen that video of the space shuttle where you see an airplane, like an F6, like some kind of an airplane pass right beneath the tank?
The one where, so I think the one you're talking about is like, so the big orange tank.
Yes.
Hold up. Allegedly, the guy on the space shuttle is recording this with a handheld camcorder through the window. They've gone around the Earth a complete orbit, and he sees the thing down there, and it's just kind of chilling. Like when you look at that in comparison to the Red Bull space jump thing, and I mean, that guy jumps out and he's like, he's gone in a second. You can't even see him anymore. But this thing, they allegedly went all the way around the Earth, and they're just still watching this 25,000-pound tank free fall. But then, like, yeah, somebody like put it in high contrast, and it looks like this like recovery vehicle or something's coming up to get its orange blimp back.
And I bring this up because now they're doing everything CGI, but they used to have other types of effects. And so, like, I have this clip here where they're recording the Endeavor's external tank falling away. But the optical illusion is that they're not really 200 miles up looking down through the clouds at the ocean. They're on the ground.
Yeah, flip it over and you're just looking up at this blimp in the sky.
Yeah, they're exactly. So they're looking at a blimp in the sky and they're pretending that they're above the clouds looking down. And so I have this clip here, and yeah, sure enough, and I've even adjusted the contrast, the Endeavor tank is really a blimp, and you see the blimp recovery plane zooming right by it, and there's no other explanation. At the altitude they would be, at the speed they're at, you wouldn't have an airplane up there a couple hundred miles above the Earth zipping right by the fuel tank.
Yeah, I mean, the fuel tank, how long does it take them to go around the Earth in their pretend world? You know, I mean, 45 minutes or something?
It's like 93 minutes.
So, like, it doesn't take a 25,000-pound tank 93 minutes to fall back to Earth. Or they say it burns up on its way down, but that thing wasn't burning or falling.
Well, hey, thanks for the information on the dragon. I'll share that link, and I'm going to evaluate this because, yeah, it does seem like there's a flying dragon. It says this wouldn't be the first time. Apparently somebody else saw something like that in 2016. But, yeah, my opinion is if it looks like a dragon and it's in any of these space videos, it is a dragon. Because everything there was put there on the editing floor because it's fake. So it has to be intentional.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Thanks for taking my call.
Yep. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Have a great evening.
All right. You too. Bye.
All right, everyone. That's Nick Fingar. And yep, we were able to locate the dragon in space. So, you know, on the presumption that they're presenting us with a movie, And NASA is special effects. It's science fiction psyops. It's Mystery Science Theater 3000. We're just forced to watch bad sci-fi movies. But if there's something in there, in this case a dragon, or on the mouse mission you see mice, it means that it's intentionally placed there. There's no other explanation. That is the only explanation that makes sense. Okay, so today we talked about the drone and its obstacle detection, acting as though those mountains in the background were right there next to it. We didn't go too deep into the various movie sets, but I have a lot of clips to go through with regard to these LED virtual sets. We talked about the further connections between Luigi and the Joker via Deadpool, Wade Wilson, and a serial killer with a Joker face tattoo who also has a lot of fans like Luigi. There's so many layers to this. We got into quite a few different areas, but we'll continue this conversation tomorrow for Infinite Plane Saturn Day. And yeah, let me show you a link here. So if you want the link, you can investigate the dragon. We got to find the octopus one. I want to find the one where they're in space and you see what somebody reports to be a dragon, but it's obviously an octopus in the ISS swimming pool. And I think it's some kind of a joke because that year they were sending baby octopuses up into space. So no coincidences on the world stage. Sort of like with a movie. If you see something in a movie, the camera focuses on some element, there's a good chance it's foreshadowing and you're going to see it again later, but there's nothing unintentional. And when we look at these major news events, I treat it like it's a movie, like we're looking at a Stanley Kubrick film. So you see this Luigi character in the cab and the air freshener looks like Deadpool. You have to assume it means something, and we did. And what did we find? Deadpool equals serial killer with a bunch of female followers, and it also correlates with the Joker and this anti-hero theme. So no coincidences here on the world stage. Anyway, thanks for joining. This is Auto Hoax or GTFO.